It's the gender norms of your community or your society. What do they mean when they say to a little girl, act like a lady?
Well, I still don't act like a lady, and I'm 52.
Good for you.